So welcome, dear friends. I'm so happy to be able to be with you. The last time we got together, we talked about the first noble truth. We talked about suffering. Suffering exists, and the ways of developing a different kind of relationship with our suffering. I wanted to continue with that a little bit and continue down. To continue to look at the other of the Four Noble Truths. We're going to begin again today with 3 sounds of the bell, as we always do, to give you an opportunity to come back to yourself. And as I might have suggested, I would like to invite you to pause your device and enjoy just a few minutes of silent sitting before you listen to the rest of the talk. So we'll invite the bell. So, dear friends, when we always start with stopping like that, I think that one of the last teachings of the Buddha was the discourse on taking refuge in the self. And what he talked about in that sutra was how important it was for us to be able to take refuge in the Dharma in ourself, take refuge in the practice in ourself. And what's required for us to do that is for us to develop, to deepen our practice. Every time we do our sitting meditation, every time we do our walking meditation, every time we bring ourselves back to our true nature, to our true home inside ourselves, what I feel we're doing is we're building that island. Every single time we do this, we're hardwiring in the capacity to get back there. We're putting another stone on that island. And what happens then is that when the going gets tough in the rest of our lives, we always have that place of peace and serenity. We always have that island where we can take refuge. And it's nothing outside of ourselves. It's with us everywhere, always. So in the practicing we've done with suffering, the Buddha taught that suffering exists. I think we've all agreed that that's true. Probably just about everybody's experienced some of it in their lifetime. The second of the Four Noble Truths is there are causes of suffering. And what Thich Nhat Hanh tells us is in order to transform and to go through the suffering, we need to get to the root cause of the suffering. If we don't get to the root cause of the suffering, we just develop more suffering. What are some of the causes of suffering? Not accepting what is. We talked about that a little bit, that we oftentimes have an aversion to what's happening in our lives, that we want things to be different than they are. We want what we want. And when we don't get things to be working the way we want, we suffer. So accepting what is is a huge part of the practice. A lot of us have an aversion to that idea, that it feels like, oh, I'm just sitting back, and it's considered to be almost like a loss. We have a feeling of a sense of loss, when in fact, we don't have a choice. Whatever's happening in this moment is what's happening in this moment. And if we choose to resist it, we're just wasting time. So to accept what is a very deep practice. Then accepting ourselves. A lot of times we've been powerfully conditioned to feel we're not okay, we're not good enough. We need to be different than we are. And what Thich Nhat Hanh says is, you are already what you want to become. Why search anymore? You're a wonderful manifestation. The whole universe has come together to make your existence possible. There is nothing that is not you. The kingdom of heaven, the pure land, nirvana, happiness, liberation are all you right now. And when we can stop and consider what a miracle it is, this lifetime of ours, the whole universe has come together to make our existence possible. Carl Sagan would tell us that we're made of star stuff, that indeed the entire universe has come together to make our existence possible. We're made of the sun and the rain and the earth, all of it. And it's quite miraculous when you think that we were all two cells at one time, and here we are, being able to walk and talk and relate to one another and enjoy all of the wonders of life. So we need to rethink that. Thich Nhat Hanh says at the core, when we go to the root of any difficulty, we find there's a misperception. That's a huge misperception that a whole lot of us suffer from, is that we're not okay, that we're not good enough, that we're not enough, when in fact we're all miracles. And we need to be able to honor ourselves and treat ourselves that way. Instead, a lot of times we get into criticizing and judging. We have another difficulty that causes a lot of suffering, and that is a resistance to accepting others as they are, that we want other people to be what we want them to be, and we're not going to accept them until they are. And that doesn't work very well. That we need to be able to learn that criticizing, judging, and blaming are only going to cause us more suffering. And Thai gives a very beautiful teaching about this, I think. And it's something so simple as he says, when you plant lettuce, if it doesn't grow well, you don't blame the lettuce. You look for reasons it's not doing well. It may need fertilizer or more water or less sun. You never blame the lettuce. Yet if we have problems with our friends or family, we blame the other person. But if we know how to take care of them, they will grow well like the lettuce. Blaming has no positive effect at all, nor does trying to persuade using reason and argument. That is my experience. No blame, no reasoning, no argument, just understanding. If you understand and you show that you understand, you can love and the situation will change. This is like flying to the other side of the moon for many of us, that I think a lot of us have been conditioned to believe that you have to suffer. You have to have somebody feel badly about themselves, or we need to feel badly enough about ourselves if we're going to get motivated to change. And the opposite is what I found to be true, that we need to be very careful about nourishing all the highest and best seeds in ourselves and all the highest and best seeds in somebody else. All that he's saying here also applies to criticizing and judging ourselves, that trying to use reason and argument and blame and criticism just doesn't work. What we need to do is develop understanding for ourselves and other people. When we can understand our conditioning, what's led us to develop the habits that we have, the unskillfulness perhaps that we demonstrate, it's only the logical outcome. There's no more need for blame or criticism. And the other thing is that we have no idea what other people have been through, what their conditioning has been, and what's led them to act the way that they act with us. Miller Williams wrote a beautiful poem. He said, "Have compassion for everyone you meet, even if they don't want it. What seems conceit, bad manners, or cynicism is always a sign of things no ears have heard, no eyes have seen. You do not know what wars are going on down there where the spirit meets the bone." So to remind ourselves when we're in the midst of criticizing and judging, we don't know. We have no idea the suffering that has gone on or what is going on for people. Another thing that causes our suffering is our unwillingness to accept our situation. That very frequently we're confronted with conditions that are unpleasant, and we have a lot of resistance to that. So we need to develop our mindfulness and concentration so that we can be aware of what's going on for ourselves in any given situation. There are 6 gates to our consciousness through which we take in all of our experience. There are the 5 consciousnesses, the 5 senses, taste and touch and smell, and there's the 6th is the mind. And it's through all those 6 gates that we experience the world, that's what determines our experience of this lifetime. And what Tai tells us is that we are the guardians of those gates, that we're the responsible party, that we get to decide when we leave the gates open and when we're closing the gates. What are we taking in through all of our senses? What are we taking in through our mind consciousness? What do we expose ourselves to? And if we nourish the highest and best seeds in our consciousness, that's what's going to manifest. If we nourish all the unwholesome seeds, that's what will manifest. And the same goes true for what we do with other people. That when we're in the midst of criticizing and judging and blaming other people, our tendency might be to water all of their most unwholesome seeds. And we're only strengthening those aspects in that person that we are not happy with to begin with. We're making them even stronger. What we need to be able to do is look to a difficult person who's difficult for us and see what it is. What are the wholesome seeds that I can nourish? What can I strengthen? Can I strengthen the highest and best in that person so that is what manifests? And when we can develop the mindfulness and concentration, we can understand what needs to be done. It's like offering the correct medicine. The Buddha during his lifetime was called the great physician because when people asked him, "Who are you and what are you doing?" he said, I teach only suffering and the end of suffering. Because of that, he was sometimes referred to as the great physician. He was offering the medicine needed to alleviate suffering. So we need to be able to choose good medicine. So then the third noble truth is that there is a cessation of suffering. And the fourth is that there is a way out. And the way out is that there is an eightfold path. The eightfolds of the path, there's right view, there's right thinking, right speech, and right action. Those are the first 4 of the eightfold path. These are the speech, action, and thoughts are what we call the triple karma. Those are the ways we create karma. And it's through our thoughts, words, and deeds. So these are really, really important. And a lot of times our thoughts, words, and deeds are the outcome of our view. So we need to be very mindful of what kind of views we're entertaining, what kind of views we hold. The others of the Eightfold Path are right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and concentration. And mindfulness and concentration are the foundation of the whole thing that we can't really practice well unless we develop those qualities. So if we look at the thoughts, words, and deeds, Thich Nhat Hanh says that our thoughts, words, and deeds are our poems. They bear our signatures, and we need to be very careful about all 3 of those things. We need to understand that that concentration and mindfulness are what give us free will. That people refer to karma, or they look at karma as being fatalistic, that, oh, you were nasty in a past life and therefore you're suffering in this one, or something like that. It's not nearly like that. Multidimensional. And what gives us free will is when we develop our concentration and our mindfulness, we're able to choose, that we can see the habits as they arise. We understand what the conditioning has been, what the habit has been. And when that happens, if it's been unskillful and we've created a lot of suffering for ourselves, we can choose to do something else. And it's being in that place of being able to choose that gives us free will. Otherwise, we just keep reacting out of habit and creating more unwholesome karma. So we have, Thay offers us some ways out of suffering by giving us some questions that we can ask ourselves. Whenever we find ourselves stuck, we can look at the way out. And he says, sometimes we feel as though we're drowning in the ocean of suffering, carrying the burden of all social injustice of all times. The Buddha said, quote, "When a wise person suffers, she asks herself, what can I do to be free from this suffering? Who can help me? What have I done to free myself from this suffering? But when a foolish person suffers, she asks herself, who has wronged me? How can I show others that I am a victim of wrongdoing? How can I punish those who have caused my suffering? Why is it that others who have been exposed to the same conditions do not seem to suffer as much as we do?" You might like to write down, and this is what Thay offers. He says, you might like to write down the first set of questions and read them every time you're caught in your suffering. So the first set of questions would be, what can I do to be free from this suffering? Who can help me? And what have I done to free myself from this suffering? And one of the questions I like to ask myself is, am I a victim or a student? When he says, a foolish person says, who has wronged me? How can I show others that I'm a victim of wrongdoing? How can I punish those who have caused my suffering? That's when we're really being a victim. So whenever I'm confronted with big challenges in life, what I try to do is have that question come right to the forefront of my mind and say, do I want to be a student or do I want to be a victim? No matter how big the challenges are, if we can learn something from our suffering, if we can transform and heal from our suffering, then there's goodness to suffering. In the last probably 10 years, most of the talks that I heard Thay give were about the goodness of suffering, to be able to put our suffering to good use so we learn something, we can do some transformation and healing. When somebody pushes some buttons in me and brings up some mental formations from my stored consciousness to my mind consciousness, and I have to look deeply to understand what's going on with me, it gives me an opportunity to transform and heal some things I might have been carrying around for a whole lifetime. And so if I can pay attention and if I can learn from that, if I can transform those things, I want to send that person a thank you note by the time we get done, because I'm freed up. It helps me to untie my knots. So we need to, that's one question that helps me, is am I a victim or am I a student? And I do my best to always try to be a student. The other thing that I have come up with is 4 questions that really help me untie knots when I feel myself in a really stuck place. And the first one is one that Thay has given us. And he says to always ask, and this goes back to the first of the Eightfold Paths, right view. Whenever we're stuck in, we're absolutely determined that we're right. We're absolutely determined that we know what the outcome should be, et cetera, et cetera. We have a view. Then he says to ask yourself, are you sure? If I'm sure that the whole world is going to come to an end and that things are getting horrible and it's a terrible, awful thing that's happening, and I then project this horror story onto it, I need to ask, are you sure? And the answer is no. He said, if you ask yourself, are you sure, and you say yes, then you should check again. So that's the first question that's really important to ask. Are you sure? And for me, it's almost a magic key to get me to shift my view. to shift my point of view, or at least loosen my grip on my point of view. So then I always ask, am I sure? That's the first question. The second question is, what am I afraid of? A lot of times I'll be really angry about something, and I'm convinced I'm really angry. But if I look deeply and I just sit and breathe and really try to embrace that anger, what I find out is that I've been badly hurt, perhaps, or I'm feeling sad. And the anger is simply a cover for a much deeper feeling that I'm experiencing. And so a lot of times it can be fear at the basis of anger. Right now in our country, I'm seeing that happen so often, that people are very afraid for a whole bunch of different reasons, and that anger is the outcome, that's what's manifesting, is a lot of anger. So it really helps us to be able to look deeply, to cut through the surface of that anger, if we get down to what am I really afraid of, and we can take good care of that fear. Most of the time you'll find that the fear is empty, that there's really not too much that we have to be afraid of. And it also helps us to give the right medicine, to address exactly what the problem is, rather than be, if I get caught in the anger, I can get angry at people that I look at as being the cause of the difficulty, or just waste my time in a lot of ways. If I get to the root of it and say, what am I afraid of? And I can transform that fear in myself and calm myself down, I'm in a lot better place, much more solid place, to make good decisions and to take effective action. It's also been clear right now, for what's going on in our country, that there are all kinds of different groups of people that in all different ways, and it doesn't have anything to do with political parties, it's just people trying to instill fear in order to manipulate people. So I find that our practice is invaluable right now, to be able to check in with my fear and not to be able to be manipulated by it. It's a real gift. So what am I afraid of? And let's see. There we go. John Lennon said, there are two basic motivating forces, fear and love. When we are afraid, we pull back from life. When we are in love, we open to all that life has to offer with passion, excitement, and acceptance. We need to learn to love ourselves first in all our glory and our imperfections. If we cannot love ourselves, we cannot fully open to our ability to love others, or our potential to create. Evolution and all hopes for a better world rest in the fearlessness and open-hearted vision of people who embrace life. So again, it has to do with developing a little bit of courage to be able to be with our own suffering, and to be able to cut through the surface and get to the root cause of fear in us. Transform our fear. So I ask, am I sure? What am I afraid of? If those two things don't get me out of trouble and don't untie those knots, then I ask myself, what am I attached to? Am I attached to a view? Am I attached to an outcome? Have I made a deal that says something like, unless this turns out the way I want it to turn out, I can't be happy? Unless I get what I want, I can't be happy? As soon as I've done that, I have signed a contract to suffer quite a lot. And so when I can check in with myself and see, am I attached to a view? I really know that this has to work out in this way, or there's going to be real big trouble. Am I sure? Absolutely not. What am I afraid of? I'm afraid I'm not going to get my own way. Am I attached to this view? Yes. And then the fourth question is the way I'm thinking about this of any benefit to myself or anybody else? And generally the answer to that is absolutely not. And if that happens to be the answer, then we really need to let go. We need to check our minds. The way I'm thinking about it is that I'm awfulizing, perhaps. I'm thinking that, oh, if I don't get this, so if this doesn't work out, we're doomed or whatever. Is that helpful? Is it of any benefit to myself or anybody? Not really. So then we need to be able to let go. I think that by the time we get to the end, if we've asked ourselves the 3 questions that the Buddha has offered us, the question that Ty has offered us, and the questions that I have offered, for me anyway, it is a beautiful system. It's a very elegant system of freeing myself up. And then we suffer a whole lot less. So, when we're talking about the Four Noble Truths, and we talk about suffering, when we can follow the instructions that the Buddha has given us, when we can follow the instructions that Ty has given us, as I said before, we don't get rid of all suffering. It's not that we never suffer again, but we transform our relationship with suffering. We accept suffering as just one part of life. It's a part of the whole. Just like loss and pain and all those things, it's just all part of the oneness of everything. And so we don't have to try to resist any of it. We can just say, oh, right now suffering exists. We don't have to make the suffering worse than it is. We don't have to add other arrows to that first arrow. And we can be a lot freer and a lot happier. Thomas Merton, who was a good friend of Thich Nhat Hanh's, I wanted to end with a quote by him. He said, "Our job is to love others without stopping to inquire whether or not they're worthy. That's not our business, and in fact, it's nobody's business. What we're asked to do is love, and this love itself will render both ourselves and our neighbors worthy." So when I read this, again, we go back to ourselves. Our job is to love ourselves without stopping to inquire whether we're worthy. It's not our business. In fact, it's nobody's business. What we're asked to do is to love, and this love itself will render both us and everybody else worthy. So our practice is about expanding our capacity to love. And in doing that, we are able to be extraordinarily happy and much freer, enjoy life and all the wonders of life. So again, I want to thank you for being willing to listen to this talk, and we'll end with 3 sounds of the bell. So thank you again, dear friends. And I hope I've offered you something that you could put into practice right away. Take care.